Hello, my name is Alex and I'm 25 years old. It was one of those lazy evenings where the world outside my small apartment felt distant and unimportant. I was standing in the cramped kitchen, the microwave humming softly as it reheated a slice of cold pizza from last night's takeout. The cheese had congealed into a greasy mess, but it was comfort food, the kind that required no effort. That's when my phone buzzed on the counter, the screen lighting up with an unknown number. I stared at it for a second, debating whether to let it go to voicemail. Unknown calls usually meant telemarketers or wrong numbers. Nothing worth the interruption. But something tugged at me, a faint prickle at the back of my neck, like the universe was nudging me to answer. Against my better judgment, I swiped to accept. The voice on the other end was familiar but unexpected. Sarah, Mike's mom. Mike was my best friend from college, the guy who dragged me into late-night gaming sessions and spontaneous road trips. We'd graduated a couple of years ago, and I still crashed at his place now and then, especially since my job at the local bookstore didn't exactly scream financial stability. Sarah and I had exchanged pleasantries over the years. Holiday dinners, quick hellos when I picked up Mike. But she wasn't the type to call out of the blue. "Alex, is that you?" Her tone was tight, edged with something I couldn't quite place. Surprised, I leaned against the counter, the pizza forgotten as it beeped insistently behind me. "Yeah, it's me. Everything okay? Sorry if I'm catching you at a bad time." She never called without a reason, and that realization made my stomach twist just a little. "There's an animal in the basement," she said, her words tumbling out in a rush, laced with unmistakable worry. "It's scratching around down there, making these awful noises, and I have no idea what to do about it. Mike always says you're handy with stuff like this. Good in a pinch." I paused, my mind flashing to images of scrabbling claws and beady eyes. An animal? In the basement? For a split second, I pictured myself as some reluctant exterminator, armed with a broom and a prayer. "An animal," I repeated, trying to sound more confident than I felt. In my head, it was a raccoon. Those masked bandits were notorious for urban invasions in our neighborhood. But it could be anything: a possum, a stray cat, or worse. She sounded utterly drained as she explained the rest, her voice cracking slightly with exhaustion. Animal Control's line was jammed. An endless hold music loop that had already eaten up half her afternoon. She was on the verge of full-blown panic, the kind that creeps in when you're home alone and the shadows start to feel alive. "Please, Alex," she pleaded, and there was a raw vulnerability there that hit me harder than expected. "Can you come over, right now? I wouldn't ask if it wasn't urgent." I hesitated, glancing at the clock, 7:45 p.m. My evening plans involved a six-pack and a binge watch, but how do you say no to that? Grabbing my keys from the hook by the door, I muttered a quick agreement, already pulling on my jacket. On my way. Hang tight. The drive to their suburban house took less than 15 minutes, but it felt longer in the gathering dusk. Streetlights flickered on one by one, casting long shadows over manicured lawns and parked minivans. Sarah's place was a cozy 2-story colonial, the kind with a wraparound porch and flower boxes that bloomed riotously in spring. But when I pulled into the driveway, the warmth was absent. She was already outside, pacing the length of the porch like a caged animal herself, arms wrapped tightly around her midsection as if holding herself together. Her hair was pulled back in a loose ponytail, strands escaping to frame her face in soft waves. She wore an oversized gray sweatshirt that swallowed her frame, paired with black leggings and scuffed running shoes, outfit of someone who'd started a mundane errand or workout and been derailed by chaos. The sight of her like that, vulnerable and disheveled, stirred something unfamiliar in me. Relief flooded her features the moment she spotted my car, and she let out a breathy half-laugh that bordered on a sob. "Thank God you're here." I killed the engine and stepped out, forcing a casual smile. "No problem at all. Let's get this sorted." I followed her lead as she ushered me inside, the front door creaking open to reveal the familiar scent of her home. Lavender from the candles she burned and a faint undercurrent of fresh, baked bread from earlier meals. We moved down the hallway toward the basement door, the air growing cooler and mustier with each step. The scratching was audible now, a persistent, rhythmic scrape against wood or concrete, punctuated by muffled thumps. It set my teeth on edge, like nails on a chalkboard from the shadows. "Here," she said, thrusting a headlamp into my hands along with a pair of thick leatherwork gloves. Her fingers brushed mine briefly, warm against the chill. It wasn't her first brush with household intruders, that much was clear from the preparedness. Her eyes, wide and shadowed with fatigue, locked onto mine. "Just, don't get bitten or anything. Rabies isn't on my bingo card this week." I chuckled, more to ease the tension than anything, and strapped on the headlamp. I'll do my best. Promise. Descending the narrow wooden stairs, I felt the weight of her gaze on my back, and my heart picked up a staccato rhythm I tried to ignore. The basement was a dimly lit warren of storage bins, forgotten holiday decorations, and exposed pipes snaking along the ceiling. Cobwebs clung to corners like ghostly veils, and the air smelled of damp earth and old cardboard. I moved methodically, sweeping the beam of light across shelves and behind stacks of boxes, whispering soft reassurances. Not just to the creature but to myself. Easy there, buddy. No one's hurting you. The sounds grew louder near the far wall. Behind a sagging antique dresser that looked like it had seen better decades. There it was, a raccoon, its bandit mask gleaming in the light. Eyes wide with cornered panic as it huddled against the concrete. It wasn't huge, but its claws looked sharp enough to regret. Heart pounding. I eased open the small ground, level window at the base of the wall, propping it with a nearby crate. Grabbing a broom from the corner, its handle worn smooth from years of use, I gently prodded, guiding the animal toward the sliver of freedom. It hesitated, then bolted, a blur of fur and fury vanishing into the night. The sudden silence was profound, broken only by the distant hum of crickets outside. Climbing back up, I dusted off my jeans and found Sarah waiting at the top, twisting a dish towel in her hands. She looked smaller in the warm kitchen light, the lines of worry easing from her face. "Well?" she asked, almost breathless. "Mission accomplished," I said, flipping off the headlamp. "Just a raccoon looking for a midnight snack. He's out in the wild now." Her shoulders sagged with relief, and she pressed a cool glass of lemonade into my palm. Tart and fizzy, with a sprig of mint floating on top. "You're a lifesaver, Alex. I don't know what I would have done." We migrated to the back porch, settling into Adirondack chairs that creaked under our weight. The evening air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of wood smoke from a neighbor's fire pit. Birds called lazily from the trees, and somewhere down the block, a dog barked at nothing in particular. It was the kind of peaceful that wrapped around you like a blanket, chasing away the earlier adrenaline. As I sipped the lemonade, watching fireflies wink in the gathering dark, I noticed how she began to unwind. Her posture softened against the chair's slats, her fingers drumming lightly on the armrest. A habit, I realized when her mind was spinning down from high gear. "Mike's off skiing with his girlfriend up in the mountains," she said after a moment, her voice lighter now. "I figured I'd tackle the basement while he was gone. Sort through all that junk before it buries us alive. Then this." She gestured vaguely toward the house, a wry smile tugging at her lips. I nodded, keeping things easy. "Basement purgatory. We've all been there. At least it wasn't a family of squirrels." She laughed then, a genuine sound that bubbled up and filled the space between us. And we let the conversation drift to safer waters. Her stories from college volleyball, the epic spikes and the disastrous team bus breakdowns that left them stranded in the rain. That night wrapped up with more lemonade refills and easy banter, the porch light buzzing softly overhead. But as I drove home, windows down to let the cool air rush in, something lingered in the air between us, intangible yet insistent. A thread, perhaps pulled taut for the first time. In the weeks that followed, that thread didn't snap, it wove itself subtly into the fabric of our interactions. Sarah started with the small waves when I'd cruise by on my way to pick up Mike for a game or a beer run. Harmless, friendly acknowledgments from the porch or the kitchen window. But then came the requests, casual at first, born of practicality. "Hey, Alex, while you're here waiting on Mike, could you grab that box from the attic? It's wedged up there, and I'm too short to reach." Or, "The window in the study sticks. Mind giving it a nudge?" Or the heavy lifting, hauling bags of mulch for her garden beds, the kind that left dirt under your nails and sweat on your brow. At the outset, it felt like the neighborly give and take I'd always known with her. Widow raising a son, keeping the home fires burning while Mike and I stumbled through post-college aimlessness. Innocent errands, nothing more. Looking back though, I see the slow awakening, like dawn creeping over a foggy horizon. It built in layers, unnoticed until the light hit just right. Mike would be upstairs, lost in his headphones, bass thumping through the floorboards as he edited videos or scrolled endless feeds. I'd be in the kitchen, perched on a stool, twisting in a burnt-out bulb while Sarah hovered nearby, handing up tools or cracking jokes about my handyman glow. The air would thicken with her proximity, the faint citrus of her shampoo, the way her laughter lines crinkled when I fumbled a screw. Other times, she'd summon me to the laundry room under the guise of a jammed dryer vent. The music from Mike's room a distant roar that masked our quieter exchanges. "Just a quick fix," she'd say, but we'd linger, trading stories about bad dates or childhood mishaps. The hum of the machine filling the pauses, She always capped it with food, insistent and warm. "Can't send you off on an empty stomach," she'd declare, plating up whatever was simmering. Thick turkey sandwiches with avocado and crisp lettuce, al dente pasta tossed in olive oil and herbs, or flaky grilled salmon with a side of roasted veggies. "It's the least I can do for my knight in shining armor." I'd protest mildly, but the truth was, I looked forward to those meals, eaten at the scarred oak table in the breakfast nook. Sunlight slanting through the blinds. Over bites, the barriers thinned. She doled out pieces of herself like carefully wrapped gifts, just enough to intrigue without overwhelming. Mike's dad had died suddenly, a heart attack during a routine checkup, and the void had reshaped her world. "Grief's a thief," she said once, stirring sugar into her tea. "Steals your sleep, your appetite, then one day you wake up and realize you've been working double shifts just to outrun it." Her job at the community college library kept her surrounded by stories that weren't her own, a deliberate distraction. Then there was Emily, her daughter. Sharp as a tack, fresh off a master's in environmental policy, now chasing grants and fieldwork on the East Coast. "She's got her father's wanderlust," Sarah mused, pride mingling with a hint of ache. But none of his stubbornness, thank God. Her own father, a retired music professor, wielded a classical guitar like an extension of his soul, fingers flying over strings and concertos that could hush a room. But Alzheimer's had dimmed that fire, turning melodies into fragmented echoes. "He still tries," she said softly, eyes distant. "Picks up the guitar and strums something half-remembered. Breaks my heart every time." And the physical tolls, that nagging shoulder twinge from a volleyball tournament in Spain, where a bad dive had torn something vital. "Rainy days are the worst," she'd confess, rolling it gingerly. "Feels like the weather's got a grudge." I listened, really listened, my fork paused mid-air, absorbing the weight of her words. It wasn't pity, it was connection, the kind that sneaks up on you. One humid afternoon, we knelt side by side in the backyard, replanting lavender along the fence line. The soil was parched, crumbling under our fingers like dry biscuit, and the sun beat down relentlessly, turning our shirts to second skins. We worked in companionable silence at first, the earthy scent of disturbed dirt mingling with the sharp tang of the herbs. She leaned forward to tuck a errant bloom into place, her arm brushing mine, and in the motion, a loose curl fell across her cheek, smudged with a streak of soil like war paint. I laughed, light, unforced, and reached out without thinking, my thumb grazing her skin to wipe it away. Time stuttered. She froze, breath catching, her hazel eyes lifting to meet mine in the dappled shade. The world narrowed to that point of contact, the warmth of her cheek against my calloused thumb. Then she smiled, not the polite curve of hospitality, but something smaller, more tentative, utterly real. It lit her from within, chasing shadows from her face. In that instant, I saw the shift, clear as a fault line cracking open. The space between us, once filled with easy chatter and borrowed tools, thickened with unspoken possibility. Friendly gestures, shared plates. Suddenly, they carried echoes of something deeper, more electric. I pulled back slowly, heat rising in my chest, but the moment hung there indelible. Later, as the sun dipped lower and I gathered my things to leave, she lingered at the sliding glass door, one hand on the frame. The golden hour painted her in soft edges, turning ordinary into arresting. "Alex," she said, voice low and earnest, "you've been really good to me. More than you know." I shrugged it off, scuffing my boot on the threshold. "It's nothing. Happy to help." Her gaze held mine, unwavering. "It's not nothing." The words landed like stones in still water, ripples spreading. She didn't elaborate, and I didn't press. But driving home that evening, windows cracked to let in the cooling breeze, sleep evaded me. My mind replayed fragments: the brush of our hands over the trowel, gritty with soil, her laugh, rich and unguarded. After I recounted Mike's legendary exam flop, snoring through organic chem, only to wake with marker doodles on his face courtesy of a vengeful roommate. And her eyes, God, the way she looked at me. A mix of longing and restraint, like she was fighting a current but losing ground. As if she shouldn't, but couldn't look away. From that point, the pull was mutual, a gravitational shift we both registered but left unnamed. We danced around it, words skirting the edges. It felt precarious, like teetering on a cliffside path, toes curling over the drop, each of us scanning the other for the first leap. Neither of us had wings, but damn if the view wasn't intoxicating. I started staying longer, excuses thin as the summer air. Mike was out more. Nights at dive bars with their trivia leagues or crashing at friends after too many IPAs. One such evening, I'd volunteered to help Sarah with the attic purge. A chore she'd been dodging since spring. The pull-down ladder was a rickety thing, narrow as a foxhole, and the space above was a time capsule of dust, moated relics. Twinkling Christmas lights tangled like veins, yellowed books stacked in precarious towers, boxes labeled in faded Sharpie, Emily's art supplies, David's old records. We hauled them down in tandem, me balancing on the top rungs while she steadied from below, our voices echoing up through the hatch. Laughter broke the monotony when a box split midway, cascading feather bows and plastic vampire fangs across the hallway floor. Halloween castoffs from Mike's tween phase. I snatched up a floppy witch's hat, plopping it atop my head at a jaunty angle. Double, toil and trouble, I intoned, waggling my eyebrows. She dissolved into giggles, a snort escaping before she clapped a hand over her mouth, feigning horror. You're incorrigible. And terrible at Shakespeare. The effortlessness of it unnerved me. How we folded into each other's rhythm without trying. We collapsed onto the living room floor afterward, backs to the couch, a bottle of Pinot Noir between us. Glasses clinked, and the wine loosened tongues further. Talk meandered from vinyl jazz records her husband had collected, Miles Davis solos that could unravel your soul, to the roads not taken. Her dream of photojournalism shelved for motherhood and stability. My own vague aspirations for writing that gathered dust in notebooks. Life's got this way of rerouting you, I said, swirling the ruby liquid in my glass. One wrong turn, and suddenly you're miles from where you aimed. She nodded, gaze thoughtful. Or maybe it's not wrong turns, just detours that teach you the scenic route. I opened up then, words spilling like the wine. My mom, gone too soon, cancer claiming her when I was 6. The hole she left was a quiet one, filled with my dad's stoic silences and the echo of unanswered questions. I grew up feeling like a ghost in my own house, I admitted, staring at the carpet's weave. Always waiting to be seen, you know. Like if I just tried harder, someone would notice. She set her glass down, shifting closer, her knee brushing mine. Mike's dad. He was like that once. Eyes that made you feel like the center of the universe. But time drifts people apart. Gaps widen without fanfare until you're shouting across canyons. Her voice trailed, soft as a confession. I glanced up. Her wine glass dangled forgotten in her lax fingers. She sat cross-legged, the lamplight weaving gold through her chestnut hair, catching the fine lines at her eyes, marks of laughter and loss. Our eyes met, and the room held its breath. It was brief, that locked gaze, but charged, like static before a storm. I leaned in, deliberate yet hesitant, every nerve attuned for retreat. Her breath hitched, but she didn't pull away. Our lips met tentatively, a feather, light graze that sent sparks skittering down my spine. Then firmer, exploring, her hand rising to cup my cheek, fingertips tracing the stubble along my jaw as if committing it to memory. My glass tipped, wine pooling harmlessly on the rug, but it registered distant, irrelevant. There was no frenzy, no clumsy haste, just the slow dissolution of an invisible wall, breaths mingling, hearts sensing in the quiet. She drew back first, eyes fluttering open, a sharp inhale breaking the spell. I know this is dangerous, she whispered, thumb lingering on my lip. The word hung heavy, laced with truth. Yet in that vulnerability, neither of us retreated. We sat there, foreheads touching. The world outside forgotten. I left after midnight, the night air a shock against flushed skin, her taste still on my lips. We hadn't crossed every line, not fully. But the barrier was breached, a fissure widening with inevitability. The days blurred into a haze of charged normalcy. I kept showing up, tools in hand, under the guise of chores. But the undercurrent hummed now. Impossible to ignore. She'd choose fabrics that whispered against skin, silk blouses unbuttoned one notch too far, sundresses that swayed with her steps. Her scent clung longer, jasmine and vanilla, infiltrating corners of the house like a secret. Goodbyes stretched, her fingers grazing my wrist in a pulse-point farewell that lingered like a promise. A week on, the dam broke, not in recklessness, but in quiet inevitability. Mike was at a concert across town, the house empty save for us. What began as a shared coffee in the sunlit kitchen evolved. Hands finding waists, mouths seeking solace. It was deliberate, eyes open to the risk, bodies remembering what words couldn't capture. Afterward, tangled in sheets that smelled of her. Guilt didn't crash in waves. Instead a fragile peace settled, dangerous yes but achingly right. Secrets exact their toll though, in stolen glances and the constant math of Olympus. What followed defied expectation. No maelstrom of remorse, no brittle awkwardness fracturing the air. We carved a rhythm, organic as breathing, fraught with peril, yet seamless. We spoke of it in fragments, oblique as shadows. But actions spoke volumes, her palm sliding over mine beneath the dinner table, hidden from Mike's view, smiles that bloomed softer, more intimate. When his back turned, she'd leave the back door unlatched on still afternoons, the click of the latch a coded invitation murmured over the phone. It's open if you need it. The house transformed under our clandestine occupancy, lamps dimmed to amber glows, a playlist of Norah Jones and Fleetwood Mac murmuring from hidden speakers. She'd greet me in the kitchen wrapped in a robe of faded blue cotton, steam rising from her showered fresh skin, offering a wordless curve of lips that needed no translation. We avoided the lexicon of forever, no whispers of love, no blueprints for escape. It wasn't required. Ours was a language of silences, mature and measured. Etched in the curve of her neck against my pillow, the way her breath evened in sleep. We'd linger in bed, bodies aligned yet faces averted, fingers interlaced like lifelines. In those hours, she'd unearth her youth, the 20-something firebrand with a Nikon slung over her shoulder, chasing stories in war-torn corners or forgotten hamlets. I wanted to capture the world's underbelly, the grit, the grace, she said one dawn, tracing patterns on my chest. But then Emily came and David. And suddenly the lens shifted to sippy cups and soccer games. Life's funny that way. I'd counter with my own buried confessions the paternal chill of my childhood, Dad's monosyllabic evenings after work, the perpetual wait for validation that never arrived. I built walls so high I forgot how to climb them. I murmured into her hair. She tilted up, eyes solemn. You're seen now. More than you think. Her fingers threaded through mine, grounding. The ease terrified me most. Not the acts themselves but their fluency. Mornings became ritual. I'd ease my car into the alley 2 blocks over, hood up to feign mechanical woes if needed. Slip through the unlocked gate like a shadow, heart a drum in my throat. She'd be waiting in the hallway, towel knotted at her breast, droplets beating on collarbones, hair a dark waterfall. Words were sparse, bodies conversed fluently, rediscovering contours as if mapped long ago. Perhaps the fear stemmed from that very familiarity. The dawning horror that this could eclipse the chaos waiting beyond. Mike's orbit tightened then, his internship wrapping like a noose. Homebound, he filled the days with half-hearted job hunts and impromptu barbecues, his presence a living alarm. The air soared, caution our new creed. Attic trests yielded to hurried corners, unlocked doors to coded texts, clear. We'd ration time, breaths shallow, every creak a siren. Tension coiled, venomous now, not the thrill of before, but a serpent underfoot. Afternoons like the one I caught him in the garage shirtless, sweat glistened, headphones blasting as he sorted tools, his build a mirror of Sarah's. Same resolute jaw-piercing gaze. He waved. Oblivious I mirrored, throat tight. That night her call never came. Silence stretched into the next day, a void that echoed. Her text arrived like a verdict. His staying put, no semester return. The words landed leaden, our tightrope had frayed, Mike's proximity turned whispers to thunder. Doors groaned accusations, shadows harbored spies. Still, addiction held. We couldn't sever clean. Our next convergence was fevered, a snatched hour while he shopped for auto parts. She yanked me inside, door slamming like a guillotine, eyes wild. No preamble, her mouth crashed to mine, desperate, tasting of fear and need. It was reclamation, frantic hands mapping urgency over tenderness. In the aftermath, slumped against cool tile in the half-bath, breaths ragged, she buried her face in my shoulder. This secrecy, it's poisoning us? I know, I rasped, arm encircling her. We'll manage. Careful as thieves. But management faltered, caution crumbled under strain. Discovery's specter struck closest during a banal repair. Mike enlisted me for a laundry room fixture. Quick job, bro, he'd grinned. Sarah's Aliba hardware run, hours to spare. We ascended the ladder tandem, me twisting wires while he held steady, banter flowing easy. Then, her gasp from the doorway, sharp as glass. Front window framed his early return, tires crunching gravel, earlier than prophecy. Panic ignited. I vaulted down, palms slick on a rag, bolting rearward in a crouch. Heart a war drum, I melted into the hedge's embrace, thorns snagging denim as Mike disembarked. He whistled a jaunty tune, hefting potting soil bags, the sun gilding him innocent. Humming oblivion. He vanished indoors. I exhaled shards, fleeing to my car blocks away, tremors lingering like aftershocks. Evening brought her call, voice a fractured whisper. I misjudged the clock. Thought 5, not 3. We're good, I lied, pulse still erratic. But goodness fled, warmth curdled to dread. She withdrew by degrees, texts clipped to essentials. Calls laced with frost where affection once thawed. Mornings evaporated, touches evaporated to air. Unspoken edict ceasefire. The subtext screamed unsustainable. Final sighting etched deepest. She proffered market honey in a mason jar, golden as trapped sun, our fingers grazing in neutral courtesy. No spark, just closure's hush. Post, near miss, unraveling accelerated. Not cinematic rupture, but silken fray. Texts dwindled to echoes, visits confined to Mike's shadow, interactions starched as fresh linens. Doormat key vanished, a phantom anyway. Her initiations ceased, my probes met tepid courtesy, cordial yet cavernous. I desisted, respecting the chasm. Pain's core wasn't absence of flesh, the stolen dawns, the fevered nights, but their ephemerality, moments exquisite and evanescent. Once, her gaze pierced crowds, anointing me seer to her essence, not maternal archetype or poised facade, but Sarah unvarnished, luminous intellect, wry humor, veiled terrors. I held that mirror briefly. Now, demoted to acquaintance, raccoon wrangler, Mike's sidekick. No operatic farewell, no tear streak please, no soul-bearing ultimatums. Silence sufficed, a velvet blade. Time marched indifferent. Weeks on supermarket serendipity. Mike maneuvering the cart through aisles fluorescent bright, Sarah trailing with a laugh, head thrown back in that familiar arc, sparked by his quip on overpriced organics. Polite nod exchanged. Mine mirrored. Home that night, apartment stale with solitude, I pondered quietest partings reverberate loudest, ghosts in the walls. She never queried my longing, I hers unspoken. Luxuries unaffordable, existence persisted, her visibility surged. Mike's constant gardening duo, porch confidantes. Contentment emanated, perhaps joy's bloom. I ceased divination. Projections futile. Adaptation followed, bookstore shifts stacked like armor, weekends devoured by solitary trails. Boots crunching leaf litter, peaks granting vistas uncluttered. Hair lengthened untamed, a minor rebellion. Town exodus loomed, next year fresh starts elsewhere. Communications atrophied. Drives past her home yielded glimpses, her silhouette at the paint. Book in lap absorbed, or vacancy. Fleeting intersections. A ghost, smile, affirmation, recollection endures. Quietest valedictions impart sternest verities, affections not mere sentiment, but accountabilities forge. Alex and Sarah's chronicle unveils proximity's siren call, how solace blurs to delusion on gossamer divides. Interludes tender, authentic, balm-like. Secrecy transmutes to levy suspicion's tax, terror's toll, vigilance's vigil. Adulthood decrees halt or craving vaults bounds, wounding self or kin. True vision permits release, reverence's grace. Beauty conceded, rectitude affirmed. Residue gleams once perceived legacy. Paramount prize, lucidity, self-definition in unobserved hours. Subtle precept hearing sparks needin infernos. Shadowed bliss yields to shadowed dignity's throne. What glean you thence? Lines locus, whence commentary beckons, vistas illuminate kin. Such raw, humane tapestries resonate, channel allegiance. Bells chime, lest narratives evade, fostering vulnerability's hearth with duty's flame.